So guys, we're doing this again. We did the top 10 NES, and I'm going to follow the same format. I'm going to have my honorable mentions in no particular order, and then we're going to get into my top 10. This is not a critical top 10 list. This isn't me trying to be some fancy game journalist and pretend I know what I'm talking about. This is my personal 10 games. If I have not played a game, or have not played a game very much, it's not going to be in my top 10. We've been talking the Mega Man X games. I'm using Mega Man again like I did in the first one. A lot of people would have X or X2 in their top 10 list. I'm not going to put a game in there like that just because it's expected to be there if I have not played it, have not liked it, or played it very much. Like with Mega Man X and X2, I've barely played them. I'm terrible at them. So I'm not going to throw them in my top 10 just because they're expected to be there. So I want you guys to tell me what would be in your top 10. These are my personal top 10 games based on my personal experiences with them. So your top 10 will be different than mine. That's why I want to know what your guys' are too. So if you have something different, don't yell at me. Don't say, oh, what an idiot. Just be like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. I would have had this game. It's much nicer. All right, first honorable mention. Again, the honorable mentions are in no particular order. Super Empire Strikes Back. So they made these Super Star Wars games, and they did all three movies. So there were Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. As a kid, me and my brother had this one. We had Empire Strikes Back. We didn't have the other two. I have them now. But as a kid, this was the one. And this is one of those games where I just played the same levels over and over again because I sucked and couldn't get very far. And then once I got to where I always died, well, then we went and played something else. But I had great experience with that game. If you have never played the Super Star Wars games, I recommend giving them a shot. Another honorable mention, Super Punch-Out! Well, geez, Jeff, how's that not in your top 10? Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was in your top 5. Well, I never had this game as a kid. That's how a lot of these experience goes, and I'm sure you guys have had similar ones. You play what you have, or you play what your friends have. You don't get to play everything as a kid. And so I didn't have this as a kid, and nobody I knew had Super Punch-Out as a kid. So all of my Super Punch-Out time has been as an adult. I have not beaten this yet. That is on my bucket list to beat this game, but this game is fun. It's a completely different style than Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, like the NES one, completely different, but it's still a fun game. Final Fantasy VI, which is Final Fantasy III on Super Nintendo. So this game I've never finished, and that's why it's an honorable mention. I have no doubt this would be in my top 10 once I completely play this game. I have no doubt, but right now it's not because I have never finished it. Contra 3, The Alien Wars. So Contra 3 I'm terrible at. There was never a code, so I never made it far at this game. I never had this game. I played it at a friend's house. I really liked it, but I never had the chance to play it a lot and get good at it. Donkey Kong Country 2. 3 I've barely played, 2 I played a little bit. So I don't have a lot of experience with this game. I remember being really bad at this game, like at the beginning on the pirate ship, but I had fun with what I did play with this game. Super Mario Kart, honorable mention, because I had fun for its time. It's done a lot for today, but this one is rough to go back and play. But because of the experience I had with it back in the day, which counts heavily in these, it is an honorable mention. But man, this one's hard to play today. I don't know. Anybody agree? Disagree with that? Mortal Kombat 2. As a kid, the Sega Genesis version of this. That's what I had. But as I got older, I have played this version. I like this version better than the Sega Genesis version, but I don't have the experience with it or what it meant to me as a gamer like the Sega Genesis version did, because that's the one I had always played. But this version is really good. Super Mario All-Stars. Why is this an honorable mention? Well, I prefer the NES versions. But this was a remake when remakes weren't a thing. So it has Super Mario 1, 2, 3, both versions of 2. The US and the Japanese version that we never got. I never had a lot of experience with this one because I always preferred playing the NES versions, but going back and playing this, it's cool seeing all those games in 16-bit. You know, this is a cool way to play it. Playing the Japanese Mario 2 for the first time. So Super Mario All-Stars is an honorable mention. And my last honorable mention is Batman Returns. This is a fun beat-em-up game. I'd always played this at a friend's house. I never had it myself, but every time I went there, I wanted to play this game. I have not really played it as an adult. I have great memories of this game. I would like to go back and try it and see if it is still still fun to play today. But I remember Batman Returns, had a lot of fun with this one, a cool beat 'em up game. My last honorable mention. All right, number 10, Final Fantasy IV, which was Final Fantasy II for us here until we knew better. Before February, this would not have been on the list. This would have been an honorable mention. This is a game that I had played as a kid, barely. I didn't own it myself, played it at a friend's house, enjoyed it. But this year, on stream, I finally played it for the first time, and I absolutely loved it, and it's number 10 in my top 10 games of all time on Super Nintendo, and I played this version. I didn't play any other version. I played the Super Nintendo version. Final Fantasy IV is my number 10 Super Nintendo game of all time. Number 9, Star Fox. I loved playing this game as a kid. I don't know what it was because I was terrible at it. So it was like the first level over and over and over again. And then I would get to the second level where it was kind of like a first person view with the asteroids, and I would suck at that. This one is rough to try to play today, in my opinion. But man, the experience I had with this game as a kid was awesome. Star Fox, number 9. Number 8, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. This is rare because this is a game that I did not have, but still made it into my top 10. And the reason why is I rented this as a kid a lot, and I love it as an adult. Probably would have been higher if I would have actually owned this as a kid. They just remade it. I have not played the remake. I don't know if I ever will. Number 7, Super Metroid. This is another bucket list must finish and complete game because I've never beaten this game, but man, I love this game. Both Metroid and Super Metroid are on my bucket list to beat because I've never done it. I got way farther in Super Metroid than I did in the NES one, which is weird because this one is way longer, but this one had a map. Super Metroid, amazing game. I need to finish it. This would probably be higher if I actually completed it. Number 6, Super Castlevania 4. This is so close to even being my favorite Castlevania game with the original. It's a tough call. The fun factor of this game is insane, and it's not easy. I've never beaten it. Matter of fact, I think the farthest I ever got in this game was on stream a few years ago. I got to almost the end. But the additions they made to this game compared to the NES ones, being able to swing your whip in 8 directions, the cool backgrounds, you can go to the foreground and the background. The combat was really fun. I really like Super Castlevania 4, and if I had to pick a favorite Castlevania game of all time, I don't know if I could, because I have great experiences with this one and the original one. So that is my number 6 Super Nintendo game of all time, Super Castlevania 4. All right, top 5. And number 5, Donkey Kong Country. This game, it's hard to describe if you didn't experience the popularity of this game. Everybody played this game. Everybody had minecart stories. Everybody loved the music. Like, this game was absolutely insane. It's another one I've never beat. You're gonna see a theme here. I've never beat. As a kid, it was weird, and I kind of talked about this in my NES top 10, where I didn't really put in the effort to get better at games and beat them. I always just kind of played the same levels over and over again, and then when I died and it was game over, I took it out and I put in the next one. So it was never like, okay, all right, I'm going to play this again right now. I'm going to figure out what I did wrong. I never had that drive as a kid. I just had fun playing games. So I didn't end up beating a lot of them. And this one, I can't remember. I got pretty far in this one, but I never got to beat it. So as another one I would like to beat as an adult. Number 5, Donkey Kong Country. A lot of memories with that. The lights on and off, the stop and go, the minecart, just at the beginning, jumping backwards to get the one up, the bong, bong. I can't do the noises, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Bong, bong. Like, the game is just, it's a classic. That's why it's number 5. Well, the Super Nintendo had a load of good games. Okay, number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time. I had the Turtles 2 arcade game on my NES list, and I talked about how, like, it was nothing like the arcade game, but it was still cool to play at home, and I played the shit out of it and had good memories. It didn't matter that it looked like butt compared to the arcade game. This one, on the other hand, was like having the arcade game at home. Plus, they added extra content. There was more levels in this in the arcade version. Now, you couldn't play 4 players like you could in the arcade, but it didn't matter. You could do 2 players on this. This game is so much fun. I think this was the best at-home beat-em-up experience, in my opinion. At least that's coming to mind right now. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 is my number 4 Super Nintendo game of all time. Number 3. We're getting up there, guys. Number 3. Super Mario World. This was the first Super Nintendo game I ever played. I think it was a lot of people's first Super Nintendo game. I was so confused. I remember as a kid, wait a minute, there's 2 jumps now? Like, why is there 2 jump buttons? And why do I spin in one and not the other one? And I was always so confused on that. I can go left or right at the start. So, like, I remember being really confused with this one and struggling with this, but I was blown away by how this looked like, because this was my first Super Nintendo game I ever played. Still to this day, this game holds up, just like Mario 3. If you guys have never played Super Mario World and you want a good Mario 2D experience, in my opinion, Mario 3 is 1A, this is 1B. They're both right there with each other. Super Mario World is absolutely amazing. Number 2, Street Fighter 2. Yes, I know there was better versions of this game on the Super Nintendo, but this one started everything. This was the first fighting game I ever played. This was the version I played the most. All my friends, we would get together and play the shit out of this game, and we all sucked at it, and we would just sit there and try to do Hadoukens over and over and try to do Dragon Punches. If I played Street Fighter 2 today, this would not be the version I played. But what this did for me as a kid, what this did for Street Fighter and fighting games in general, it's hard to explain unless you were there. And yeah, this game was big in the arcades, but for some of us that we were little and didn't go to the arcades, this was the game. This was how we played it. Street Fighter 2, my number 2 SNES game of all time. And now time for my number 1 Super Nintendo game of all time, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This game, it is the best 2D Zelda game in my opinion. It's weird that a game, not the first game in the series, will be my favorite just because of nostalgia and what it meant. You know, I love the NES Zelda game, but I love this one even more. And I remember as a kid calling my friend all the time. All right, what do I do now? Where do I get the ice rod? Where do I do this? Where do I do that? Because, yeah, we didn't have the internet. I have played this game throughout my life, not just as a kid. I go back to this all the time. This is, I think, the gold standard of like 2D action games. When you turn that game on in the rain and the music playing when it rains and you don't know what's going on and you're running in the rain and you have to find the hidden way to the castle and your uncle's dying and he gives you his sword and shield, and then it starts. That whole thing is crazy. Still one of my favorite opens of all time. And then fighting your way through the castle. What? We're rescuing Zelda right away? That's weird. That was the last thing we did in the last game. I'm not counting Zelda 2. That's the last thing we did in the original game. And then 3 big dungeons. You fight the boss at the end of the 3 dungeons. You go back to the castle. You think you've progressed far. And then a whole nother world opens up. And you have the Dark World. And you have its music. And you have 7 new dungeons. And you can flip back and forth. Man, what an amazing game. A Link to the Past, Legend of Zelda. My favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. Chrono Trigger. Okay. Never played it. Never played Chrono Trigger. Never played Breath of Fire 2. Barely played Earthbound. So that's why those games are not in my list. But trust me, they're on my bucket list. Killer Instinct would be on my next tier. Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Bust Loose. I have never played that. I like the Aladdin game. That would probably be in my next tier. So guys, what am I missing that would be on your lists?